Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm going to tell you a powerful Christmas story about pride, grief, justice, and how one cruel decision can come back in the most unexpected way. This is a story about a man who lost everything, a woman who thought she was untouchable, and how fate slowly turned the tables when no one was looking. Christmas Eve was supposed to be quiet that year. The city streets were glowing with lights, shop windows sparkled, and people hurried home carrying gifts and hope. Inside a tall glass building downtown, most offices were already empty, but on the top floor, the lights were still on. And inside that corner office sat a woman named Victoria Helidot. Victoria was the CEO of a fast-growing logistics company. She was known for being sharp, fearless, and completely unforgiving. People admired her success, but they feared her temper. She believed emotions were weaknesses, kindness was inefficiency, and loyalty meant nothing unless it produced profit. Christmas Eve or not, she had decided there would be layoffs before the year ended. Down on the 22nd floor, a man named Daniel Brooks sat at his desk, staring at a framed photo beside his keyboard. It showed him and his wife, Emily, smiling on a beach years ago. Emily had died just 3 months earlier after a sudden illness. Daniel was still learning how to breathe in a world without her. Every morning felt heavier than the last. But he kept coming to work, kept showing up, because routine was the only thing keeping him standing. Daniel had been with the company for 11 years. He started when it was small, when the founders worked out of a shared space and packed boxers. Themselves, he was one of the people who stayed late, fixed problems before anyone noticed them, and trained new hires without being asked. After Emily got sick, he took fewer hours, but he never stopped giving his best. That evening, Daniel received an email from HR asking him to come to the executive floor immediately. His heart sank. He already knew what it meant. Still, he stood up, straightened his coat, and took the elevator up, rehearsing calm answers in his head. When he entered Victoria's office, she didn't look up from her tablet. The city lights reflected in the glass behind her, cold and distant. She gestured to the chair without a word. Daniel sat down, hands folded tightly together. "I'll be direct," Victoria said, finally looking at him. "Your position has been terminated, effective immediately." Daniel felt the words hit him like ice water. "May I ask why?" he said quietly. "Downsizing," she replied. "Your recent performance hasn't justified keeping you on payroll." Daniel swallowed. "My wife passed away recently. I know I haven't been the same, but I've met every deadline. I've trained the new staff. I just need a little more time to fully." Victoria raised her hand, cutting him off. "This is a business, not a therapy group. Personal tragedies are unfortunate, but they are not the company's responsibility." Daniel's voice shook. "It's Christmas Eve. I have no family left. This job is all I have right now." Victoria leaned back in her chair. "Then you should have made yourself more valuable. Security will escort you out. HR will mail your final paycheck." Daniel sat there for a moment, stunned, then slowly stood up. "I hope you never have to feel this kind of loss," he said softly. Victoria scoffed. "I don't plan to." Secure walked into his desk, where he packed his things in silence. Co-workers watched helplessly, too afraid to say anything. When Daniel stepped outside into the cold night, snow had begun to fall. Christmas music played faintly from a nearby store, mocking him with cheer he couldn't feel. That night, Daniel went home to his small apartment. He sat alone in the dark, holding Emily's scarf, letting the grief finally crash over him. For the first time since her death, he cried without trying to stop himself. Not just for her, but for the future he had lost. Days turned into weeks. Daniel struggled at first, taking temporary work, cutting expenses, selling things he didn't need. But something unexpected happened in that quiet time. With no job to distract him, he began to think. He noticed patterns from his years at the company: inefficiencies, shady contracts, decisions Victoria made that looked profitable on the surface but were deeply flawed underneath. Emily had always believed in Daniel more than he believed in himself. She used to tell him he was smarter than the people above him, that he just didn't like attention. Remembering her words gave him strength. Slowly, Daniel started consulting for smaller companies, helping them optimize their operations. Word spread. People trusted him because he was honest and thorough. Within 2 years, Daniel had built a reputation. He partnered with investors who valued transparency and ethics. Together, they created a logistics firm that focused on fair treatment, long-term planning, and clean contracts. It grew steadily, not explosively, but solidly. Daniel poured his heart into it, not for revenge, but because building something good helped him heal. Meanwhile, Victoria's company was expanding aggressively. On paper, it looked unstoppable. But behind the scenes, problems were piling up. Rushed decisions led to breached contracts. Employee turnover skyrocketed. Internal audits were ignored. Victoria silenced anyone who questioned her, convinced that confidence alone could carry her through. One winter morning, nearly 5 years after that Christmas Eve, Daniel received an email that made him pause. A government agency was requesting documents related to a series of acquisitions his former company had made. Daniel's firm had recently acquired a small competitor, and during the process, irregularities connected back to Victoria's company appeared. Daniel didn't smile. He didn't feel happy. He simply did what he always did. He cooperated fully, providing clear, honest information. The investigation widened. Authorities uncovered falsified reports, illegal layoffs, tax evasion, and evidence that Victoria had knowingly approved fraudulent practices to inflate company value. Employees who had been silenced finally spoke. Emails were recovered. Money trails were followed. The company's board panicked. Investors pulled out. Stock prices collapsed. And in a desperate move, the board sought leadership that could stabilize the chaos and regain public trust. Daniel got the call on a quiet evening. They asked him to step in as interim CEO during restructuring, citing his experience, integrity, and understanding of the company's foundations. He hesitated, not because he feared Victoria, but because returning to that place reopened old wounds. But then he thought of Emily, of the man he had been when he was fired, of how far he had come. He accepted, on one condition: full transparency and zero tolerance for corruption. The day Daniel walked back into the building, it felt surreal. The same lobby, the same elevators, but everything felt smaller, weaker. Employees looked at him with a mix of surprise and hope. Victoria, now under investigation, was called into a meeting with authorities that same week. Daniel didn't attend. He didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself. Months later, the verdict came down. Victoria was found guilty of multiple financial crimes and sentenced to prison. Cameras flashed as she was led away, her expression hollow, the confidence gone. Daniel watched the news quietly from his office. He felt no triumph, only a deep, steady calm. Justice, he realized, didn't need anger to work. It just needed truth and time. That Christmas Eve, years after the worst night of his life, Daniel stayed late at the office again. But this time, he wasn't firing anyone. He was approving bonuses, extending paid leave, and making sure every employee had a place to be, or the option to stay if they didn't. Before leaving, he placed a small photo of Emily on his desk. "We made it," he whispered. Outside, snow fell gently, and the city lights shone brighter than before. Not because power had changed hands, but because a man who was once broken chose to build instead of burn. And sometimes, that's the most powerful ending of all.